we say what we call pleasant, what we call pleasure or happiness is actual just a slight relief from something worse. Yeah.
What's written here is
Uh-huh.
that if pain is increases and while it increases, by the end it will stop. But it says when it increases, it is not changed into as it's increased. It is not changed into the opposite. It's getting worse. Pleasure, when increases, becomes suffering because I cannot eat this ice cream anymore. It becomes I get sick while I'm eating the ice cream. If I finish, I finish. If the pain comes to its end, it comes to its end and it's a release. But while it increases, that's what it says, it cannot all of a sudden
Become pleasure.
Worse pain but become pleasure.
Yes. So Leora is just stressing this again. She's saying what this verse here is saying is, just for those who didn't hear because of the microphone, or a lack thereof. So pleasure, eventually it will, with the same object, it will always turn into suffering, whereas suffering does not become a happiness. It's not like that when you suffer, and I'm saying this is true for suffering, it's always true, 100% true. So anything you do, anything to do, like to do with ordinary kind of happiness, the object that gives rise to this happiness, it will inevitably turn into suffering. Okay? So it will at some point. With suffering, that's not true. Suffering can stop, of course, but it's not like every time you suffer, you continue, and you will definitely become happiness. That's what I'm saying. Well, that's what this is saying. Right? I'm not saying that there cannot be some cases where you're lucky enough and then it does stop. Okay? All right. Anyway. So, suffering. So those sufferings, suffering of uncertainty. Okay. So those are the 8 types of suffering. And then the next types, called the 6 types, is the suffering of uncertainty, the suffering of insatiability, the suffering of having to give up our bodies repeatedly. It's on page 36. The suffering of repeated rebirth, the suffering of repeatedly descending from high to low, and the suffering of having no companions. Okay, I just want to say a few things about the first one, the suffering of uncertainty, because I think that's very fascinating. The suffering of uncertainty in the sense that if there are really past and future lives, we don't know where we're going to go. So in this lifetime, okay, so we have some sense of security, we know where we belong, we know kind of what's going to happen possibly towards our end or towards when we grow old, at the time when we grow older, but we do not know where we're going to be reborn in the future. This is the idea of uncertainty. Anything can happen. And what is so bizarre is, and this is from a Buddhist point of view, it's not just that we can be reborn as humans in any kind of state, we can be reborn as animals. I mean, who wants to be reborn as an animal? But still, it's a possibility. We can possibly be reborn as certain types of animals. Now, I like this story that is told here. I really like this. It's one of my favorite kind of quotes. And this is, if you think about the Buddhist ideas, it's not impossible. It's a possibility. So there's a story of the time of the Buddha, when there was a husband and wife, and it talks about the parents of the husband. So the father of the husband used to like to go and fish, used to go out and fish and kill a lot of fish. Now, as a result of killing the fish, and of course the motivation and everything that came together, you possibly enjoyed the killing, whatever. So I don't know whether you're necessarily always reborn as a fish if you go fishing. So don't take it too literally. But here the idea is that this person must have accumulated a very negative karma associated with killing fish and possibly with other karmas. Anyway, they were reborn as a fish. Okay. So the father of this husband and wife. Let's call them something, otherwise it's so difficult, husband and wife. Let's call them Jonathan. Sorry, I can remember Jonathan well. Jonathan and Leora. I can remember those 2 names well. Okay, Jonathan and Leora. So Jonathan is the husband and Leora is the wife. So it's not you because not everything's good about them. But anyway, husband Jonathan his father used to like and go fish, and he was reborn as a fish. And then Jonathan's mother was very attached to the house, very attached to it. And when she died, due to the attachment, she was reborn as a dog in the house. So it's not just the attachment, lots of other causes and conditions to be reborn as a dog. So don't worry, but a little bit attachment to the house is not a big problem. But anyway, she was reborn as a dog in this house. The father was born as a fish, and the mother was born as a dog of the family. And the wife, Leora, she had a lover. She had a lover, and Jonathan found out about the lover, and Jonathan killed the lover. But the lover was so attached to Leora, he was reborn as her son. Okay? Well, their son, Jonathan and Leora's son. Okay, that's the situation. So from a Buddhist point of view, that's totally possible. It's not impossible. So what happened was, Jonathan also went fishing, and he caught his father and brought home the father, and the wife cooked a nice meal with the fish. Okay? And they were sitting there together at the table. And Jonathan is eating the fish. And then the dog, who's Jonathan's mom, would like to eat the bones of the fish. Steals the bone, kind of the bones, kind of somehow jumps on the table and steals the bone. And Jonathan beats up the dog because it stole the food. Yeah, his mother, the food. And at the same time, he holds the baby, who's his enemy. Okay? So Shariputra, who had a special ability to as a clairvoyant ability, so Shariputra, he realized what was going on. And he says, he eats his father's flesh and hits his mother. The dog, right? He eats his father's flesh, the fish, and hits his mother. The enemy he killed sits on his knee. He cradles his enemy. A wife gnaws at her husband's bone. Right? So the dog is the wife. She eats her husband because she eats the fish. So a wife gnaws at her husband's bones. Samsara, or cyclic existence, can be such a farce. I love this. It's so true. You know, we have this sense in this lifetime, these are our relationship with people. They're cemented. They'll be like that forever. I love you forever. It's a sweet sentence. I love it. You know, forever. How long is that forever? Until the day you die. Right? And then next life, maybe that person becomes your sworn enemy. We don't know. Maybe your children in this lifetime were your enemies in your last life. Maybe your enemy in this life will be your child in your next life. How do you know? If this is really true, everyone has been your child. Why? If there's really past and future lives, I'm just challenging. If there isn't, then it's different. But if there is, we've existed since beginning of time. We're not born with the same children all the time. We're born with different children. So it seems they're so intrinsically those children, and we love them. But if we die, they'll be reborn somewhere else. Maybe they'll be our parents. Why not? Why not, right? So we change having a relationship with people all the time. So there's that uncertainty. We don't know. We don't know what's going to be. So this is, I think, a very powerful kind of idea that our relationship with people change all the time. That's why I usually say lovingly. There is lovingly. I say jokingly, I don't believe there's love on first sight. You know, when we talk about love on first sight, forget it. You probably were married with them before. So you're just re-meeting them. It's almost like you pick them out in a crowd and you go, oh, I'm going to marry that guy. You know, you hear these stories, right? I believe you probably were married to that person and you're just kind of connecting back to them. Because the beautiful thing is that in many lifetimes we do have sometimes similar relationship with the same people. We can sometimes get married because of a karma. We can get married to the same person over a few lifetimes. But then it'll change. Eventually it'll change. And it can change as rapidly as told in this story. So I love this story. This kind of verse here. And then Nagarjuna also says in his letter to a friend, for those in cyclic existence, there are no certainties, because fathers become sons, mothers become wives, enemies become friends, and the opposite happens as well. Right? Okay. Anyway, so That is the suffering of the uncertainty. We don't know anything can happen in the future. There's no certainty. The suffering of the insatiability. Insatiability, we're just never satisfied. We've done everything. From a Buddhist point of view, we've been kings and queens and emperors. We've been incredibly powerful. We've ruled kingdoms. We had all the money possible. And we're still not satisfied. Right? We're never satisfied. This is another type of suffering. No matter what we get, once we have it, we seek for something else. Sound familiar? So the suffering of the insatiability. What's the pronunciation? Insatiability? I think that's the pronunciation. Yeah. Anyway, so the suffering of the insatiability. That's another type of suffering we experience. The suffering of having to give up our bodies repeatedly. Again and again, giving up this body. That's a big thing. It's traumatic to die and give up your body. And then giving up again and again and again. The suffering of again and again being reborn. The suffering of repeated rebirth. Again and again we have to take birth. And then the suffering of repeatedly descending from high to low. So again and again we descend from high to low. Sometimes things go really well, everything is going well. Other times it goes down again. And always. So those are the 6 types of sufferings. And lastly, the suffering of having no companion. So the 6th is this one. In the end, we're totally on our own. We have temporarily companions, but in the end, it's just us. Right? Okay. So this is really our predicament. And this completes, the sufferings. Yes. So just before lunch, done with the suffering. So anyway, Shantideva says, you are born alone, also you die alone. As others cannot share your suffering, and of what use is the hindrance of loved ones? This should not be misunderstood. It doesn't mean that there's no use of loved ones. But in the end, we cannot attach ourselves to such a degree, hoping they can actually... we have unrealistic hopes in other people. We should love them for who they are, and we should care for them. But the sense like, they can relieve me from my suffering. In the end, they cannot. It's very limited. So in the end, we have to go alone. We have to leave everyone behind. And if we can accept this and we're aware of that, we can die lightheartedly. I think the whole point is to be more accepting of what lies ahead of us. Even if we don't aim for liberation and so forth. This is also helpful to just live a more meaningful life and accept the changes when they arrive. Right? As we die, as we lie dying, okay, being accepting of that. Having an acceptance of that and take it for what it is. And then the suffering is less great. Okay. Anyway, so that is the first of the truth of suffering. So in just a few words, the idea is that our condition is such, and we may choose to not look at it, or we may choose to face it head on. Let's just be courageous about it. That's what it's like. Let's open our eyes and look at it for what it is. And then it's easier. We have less false expectations and we're more ready to accept it. There's more of a courage. Okay, life is difficult. Any kind of work I'll start, there'll be problems. Okay, right? Any job I start, there'll be problems. Any relationship I start, there'll be problems. Okay. Right? So with this kind of in mind, you're much better equipped for a relationship, for example. Oftentimes we go into a relationship, it's going to be so wonderful. No. Not always. Right? And then we're just more, okay, this trouble was going to arise sooner or later. Okay, how can I solve this problem? And then do it like Shantideva. If there is a remedy, why worry? If there is no remedy, why worry? Right? If there is a remedy to a problem, I should apply this remedy. I should work to solve the problem. If I cannot solve the problem, what is the use in worrying? Yeah?
The Tibetan saying says, the one who has a goat has a problem of a goat.
The one who has a goat has a problem of a goat. Yes, that's true. Exactly, it's true. So whatever we do in life, this is the nature of our existence. Okay. As long as it's there, let's accept it. Let's be brave. In fact, instead of giving up and being discouraged, no, it should lead to some kind of bravery. I'll face anything, however difficult it is. And there'll be problems, there'll be trouble. I'll go through it. Okay? And then eventually, hopefully, I can overcome it. But even without overcoming it totally, even in the state I am right now, well, I'll serve around it. Okay? So I'm saying this understanding of the truth of suffering is very beneficial on many levels. Number one, forget about Buddhism, forget about enlightenment and liberation. This is just life, so as long as it's there, we can deal with it. We are realistic and we expect problems to arise. If we expect problems to arise, we're careful and we don't have a lot of wrong expectations. Number one. Number two, it may encourage us to strive towards something greater than that. Because from a Buddhist point of view, our mind has the potential to experience the most unbelievable happiness. Not the limited one that is just a mere relief of suffering. So hearing about this, it may encourage us to strive for something greater. Number three, look around and see everyone else is like that. So many problems and difficulties, actually my own problems and sufferings. And the summary of the problems and sufferings of others, my problem is nothing. So then it's a great instigator towards love and compassion. Looking at other people, may they be free from their problems. May they have happiness. May they not experience these difficulties. Because my problems are nothing. Because in terms of the numbers of other people and the numbers of problems and difficulties, when you summarize them, are much greater than my own. Just in terms of numbers of problems. So then a good reason to be more compassionate, to not just look at my own problems, but look around. What do other people experience? Is there something I can do? Is there something I can do to help others to have less problems and difficulties? So in three ways it's very beneficial. However pessimistic it first seems, but it can be so beneficial in those three ways. Okay? All right. Okay, so then the truth of the origin. Oops, and there's lunch. Yes?
What will be the topic for the discussion group?
The topic for the discussion group. I guess, yes. But suffering is good. I mean, you see, usually I don't like to determine a topic as much because it really just depends on your questions. But of course, it's a good point. Of course, it should be the truth of suffering. Points such as, do you find this is true or not? I mean, some of you may feel this is just not the case. This is not in accordance with reality. So already Jonathan, he had a very good question during the break. Someone left me this note about pervasive conditioned suffering, also very good and very important question. So Zippy's question, how precious human life, this idea, how that can be, what's the word for it? How the fact that we have a precious human rebirth, how that does not contradict the fact that we still have a body that's in the nature of suffering, and so forth. And then also, what's your name again? In the back with the white shirt? Pardon? Doron. Yeah, I knew that last year, I think, but Doron. So Doron's question also, is there anyone who doesn't experience or doesn't have a body that is in the nature of suffering? So those are all important questions. Many of you have already asked questions, and some of them haven't mentioned yet because they were asked in the group and I've forgotten now, or that you've asked here in this class. But this is what I always like about Israel, because people right away go to the kind of very important questions. So this is what's so enjoyable. You don't kind of go around kind of more superficial questions, but oftentimes people go into their very essential questions. So please continue doing that and discuss those in the discussion group. Yeah. So, but suffering it should be. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so we do the truth of the origin when we get back after 3 o'clock. Yes, and let's do a dedication prayer. Okay. Enjoy your lunch.